Alicia asks, is it too simplistic to say the beast will be a Gentile? I'm basing this on Revelation 13:1, taking into account that the sea or water signifies Gentiles. Why is there so much speculation and confusion? It seems there is a new opinion on this topic on a consistent basis.
Well, it's like Solomon saying there's no lack of books being written. There is a new opinion a lot of times, and I think scholars for the most part are seeking to wrestle with the text. I'll read Revelation 13, verse 1, which is kind of where she's basing it on. She says, is it too simplistic to say that the beast is a Gentile? First, before I read it, is the beast is a kind of a generic term that can refer to the system, like the whole Antichrist system of the beast, the governmental system as he really controls the world. The beast also speaks in reference to the person of the Antichrist. We see this as well in Revelation 20. After the 1,000 years is over, well, we can start in Revelation 19. When Jesus returns, it says that the beast and the false prophet, these two figures that appear in Revelation 13, are captured. And they're thrown into the lake of fire. There's no Hades for them. They pass go and go straight into the lake of fire. So this eternal place. Well, then what's interesting is in Revelation 20, after the 1,000 years is over, Satan is released for a short period of time, and then he's captured again. And it says, the scripture says that he is thrown into the lake of fire, the second death, where the beast and the false prophet are. So they're still there. So you want to talk about, sadly, some conscious torment. They're there for 1,000 years. They're put there before the 1,000 years, and they're still there after. But the beast and the false prophet are these two people. And so we have to be careful based on context. Is the beast a system, which it is, or is it the person? And so she's asking specifically, is the Antichrist a Gentile? It says here, Revelation 13, I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns, and blasphemous names on its head. So here, as you follow the rest of the passage, the beast comes rising out of the sea. Later we see a beast coming out of the earth in chapter 13, which is a reference to the false prophet, this other figure. Based on chapter 17, a couple things. She's saying the sea there, is that a reference to the nations? And in Revelation 17, it talks about the many waters in chapter 17 being a reference to many nations. Many waters is different than sea, two different Greek words. And so we have to be careful, again, in reading too much into that. But ultimately, what is the ethnic group of the Antichrist? I think the best example is in Daniel chapter 9, 24 through 27, talking about the 70 weeks. And in that passage, it says that, without getting fully into it, that there'll be he will make a covenant with many. This is the 70th week of Daniel, which we described. He's going to make a covenant with Israel for this last 70th week, this 7-year period. But it says, the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So you have two things here. You have the people, I'll do it over here, the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. He, the prince, will make a covenant. So who are the people of the prince who's to come? Well, first of all, instead of asking that, who are the people that destroyed the city and the sanctuary? That's Jerusalem. That's Romans. So we know that in one sense, the beast or that figure who's going to make a covenant with Israel is going to be a Roman. Now, what's a Roman? Are we talking about somebody from Rome? Are we talking about somebody from Italy? And so one of the ways to answer this is when we look at the Roman Empire, it was extremely large and diverse all throughout Europe, certainly the Middle East, and then down into Egypt, over into Tunisia, all the northern African countries. So an example would be, let's say that you were French, a person living in France, and you became a soldier in the army, the Roman army, and you happened to be stationed in Israel. So someone asked you, what's your nationality? Well, what would he say? Would he say, I'm French? Or would he say, I'm Roman? We see Paul as well describing himself that he had Roman citizenship, even though we know that he was a Hebrew from the tribe of Benjamin, right? So what we do know is that the Antichrist will be Roman. And so that's trying to say, well, he can come from a certain group. It would be hard to believe that some people say that he's Jewish, some people say he's an Assyrian. It's really hard to be super dogmatic on it in that regard. What we do know is that could he be, I do think he's a Gentile. Jesus said in the book of John that I have come in my Father's name and you don't receive me, but another's going to come in his own name and him you will receive. And so some people try to use that as an example of him being Jewish. So at the end of the day, we recognize that he's from the Roman Empire. He's of the people that destroyed the city and the sanctuary, which is Roman, which has a variety of geography to it. Mm-hmm. And so, again, we want to understand the limits of what she's asking. Is it too simplistic to say the beast will be a Gentile? I would say no. It's not too simplistic at all. In fact, I think that most likely he will be a Gentile who's going to be this other figure. We got to remember, too, that even in our modern day, you see a lot of confusion as it relates to Israel. For example, when we think about President Trump, they recognize that in Isaiah 45, there's this phraseology of my Mashiach, my Messiah, that Cyrus originally was a Messiah figure. And so they're like, hey, Trump's a Messiah figure because why? He brought our embassy over from Tel Aviv into Jerusalem. Maybe he'll be the guy that provides some sort of authority or governing authority. I mean, no doubt when the United States exerts their influence, they have a tremendous amount of influence. And so they were calling him a Cyrus figure, a Messiah figure. And so will they think the same thing about another person that comes along? Will they embrace him as their Messiah, a Gentile Messiah? That's a great question. So at the end of the day, we don't really know. But I would say it absolutely isn't too simplistic in that regard. And so I think as we think about all these questions, we always come back to Scripture. The Scripture is certainly helpful, and it gives us a lot of information, but we also know that, I know, the same thing, God does not give us an exhaustive portrait.